guidance on dealing with parents, either as a teacher, a caretaker, a nanny, or anybody who works in the field of childhood development or child education, child growth and experience of recreational activities, right? How do we deal with parents, right? We think that, oh, it's just like, why are we gonna need guidance on that, right? But when you get into the field of education, right, where especially with young children, right, especially early childhood development, you will know that dealing with parents is kind of a thing, right? And we actually have meetings about how to better handle parents, right? And you think, what's going on with the parents? Like, what's the issue here, right? So I've discovered, because I've worked mostly with early childhood development, right? And I've worked in this sort of area for a long time, you can say. So I've observed and I've seen a lot of things, right? And I'm going to give you some guidance, right? Particularly for parents who, again, parents of young children, right? Because again, parents of young children are going to be different than you could say parents of like, middle school, high school level, right? So what I've discovered, again, as dealing with parents, it does require men's sort of patience, right? Almost like I feel I have to have more patience for the parents than the actual children, right? Especially for the young kids, right? The young kids. There's a lot of patience and a lot of tolerance for these these new parents. But what I've discovered, especially with you could say with young children and their mothers, as well as the fathers, is the hormonal imbalance of women, right? And a lot of us women, we don't really give much awareness to the imbalances that do occur after we have a child, right? And those imbalances, hormonal imbalances, it doesn't just go away within 4 to 6 months. For some women, it can be like 2 to 4 years of these sort of hormonal imbalances. Because when that child comes out through the birth canal, the hips, right? And a lot of us, let's just be honest, like a lot of us, we're not very mobile in our hips. A lot of us women have really tight hips, right? And we hit the gym and we do the weights, but the mobility of the hips really does, as a woman, has to do with this sort of the sort of sensuality and the sexuality of women. And we know a lot of us in this technology age, we kind of have a stick up our ass. We take things so seriously. We're always offended, right? Because we have a stick up our ass, right? And so it's not just the hips or the ability to do a squat, right, which is wonderful, but it's also about the sexuality and the sensuality of a woman, right, and that being expressed, right? It's basically the creativity of a woman being expressed, and when that's not being expressed, right, through the body in a sensual, sexual sort of, physical, motion, right? A lot of times as women, we can get very tight hips, right? And we do squats and we do the repetitive sort of squats, and it's very repetitive, but it's not limber, it's not very loose, right? It doesn't really awaken this sort of sexual creative energy within us, right? So a lot of us, again, when we give birth, since we have such, a lot of us have real like, stick up with the ass, we have a lot of, tight hips. What happens is that when we give birth, automatically the whole sort of birth canal can get out of whack, right? Where literally the whole sort of hips can be very much, can be kind of off, right? Can be off. And over time, when you have that sort of, the hips, this whole birth canal is off. What happens is that can affect the chemistry of the brain. Think of the hemispheres of the brain. The hemispheres of the brain, I like to see, are very much kind of balancing on the hips, right? So when the hips go wanky, I like to see it as the hemispheres of the brain go wanky, right? And then the blood, the blood chemistry can get a little bit wanky, right? And then, as women, we become very sensitive, right? Very, very sensitive after we give birth, right? And that's just a normal thing. Ultra sensitive. So again, being very ultra sensitive to sound, to color, just to noise, really everything, right? we and having this sort of imbalance of the, the hips, and the sort of, the imbalance within even the hemispheres of the brain as a woman, and then having to really caretake, this child, right? It's a lot of, that's just too much, right? That's too much for a lot of women. So, and that affects the men as well, right? Because most likely the men are, they're not, right, the sex, the sex experience with the woman is not the same, because she's, she probably is very sensitive, feels very vulnerable, can even feel slightly insecure, because again, when your hips are off, it does, the security of a woman is in her hips. So we talk about, like Tina Turner and like the hips of her, right? Like you could see like she's a secure woman. She's a powerhouse, right? There's a correlation between a confidence and the hips, right? So again, when we're women and our hips are off and we're wanky in the hips, our confidence is not going to be as high. And therefore, the man, the husband or the partner or whatnot, he's gonna sense that our sexual sort of experience is not going to be the same, right? It's not going to be the same, right? And then men can get, the sort of, the frustration with the sensitivity of a woman, because they don't understand what's going on. They don't understand these sort of emotional sort of highs and these emotional sort of lows, right? In today's society, men are just busy, 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 go, 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 right? Because that's the whole, especially in this Western, culture that I live in, the United States of America, it's like men feel like they have to be busy like 24/7. But women, when after a woman gives birth, like she needs to slow down entirely, right? And, it's like men that, everything's about just jumping back, just getting back, you go through something and just kind of get your groove back, just get back on the saddle type of thing, right? And I feel like a lot of women push themselves too soon, right, to get back on the saddle, and they didn't even really completely recover or really heal, right? So then that just creates, again, it creates a longer process of healing for them, which could be for years for women. I've seen women who are like, their child is 4 or 5 years old, and I can see that they have the hormonal imbalances due to labor. I can still see it. They still have this sort of wanky hips. You could see it that they have the sort of the hemispheres of the brain are kind of wanky, right? So even in the sensitivity, you could see that, the emotional sort of deep sensitivity of women, even their kid is 4 or 5 years old is pretty much there, right? So for myself, I kind of study these the effect, right? I not the effect, but the effect of labor, but also I like to observe, right, women, young parents, and I found this to be a common theme, and I've actually even went out there and have researched, right, the effects of giving labor in today's sort of culture, right, and particularly the Western culture, and that does have an effect on the parents, right, and the way that they can be very reactive, right, or can feel very, very unstable, right, be emotional, right, and commotional, right, taking offense, right, when you're very sensitive, you take offense, right, you get very offended, right, and those are all kind of corresponding to, you could say, the wanky hips and the sort of wanky of the wanky hemispheres of the brain, right? So as a teacher, right, and dealing with parents, what I do is just in that sort of awareness of that mother, particularly, again, if the kid is like 6 months or 4 years or 5 or even 6 years old sometimes, right? That sort of awareness of what's going on internally in that mother, and the father, and how he's affected by it too, right? It actually gives me this deep sense of patience, right? Deep sense of patience and deep sense of tolerance, and really how I cultivate it. Because again, patience in today's society is like, you have to practice it, right? So what I like to do in like a daily practice, right, is I like to do back bends. Back bends, again, this is like a sort of medicine I'm offering you. Back bends, I like to do forward bends, I like to do back bends, because the forward bends and back bends, just working with the whole spine, it just gives you this sort of, I would like to say, this biochemical sense of just stability within yourself, like this sense of ease and calmness, right? When you have this sort of nice sort of, forward bend, back bend of the spine, right? When we have a really tight spine, I notice for myself, I tend to feel more agitated, right? I feel more like kind of, like you can't really sit. You feel kind of like a little bit like anxious or like restless, because it's like you feel really tight, right? And nobody likes to feel tight, because when the spine is tight, that also will you will become tight in the way that you are, right? So I really focus on, even like, you could even be 20 minutes of just forward bends, back bends, and different variations of it, like camel pose. I do like the wheel pose. I like to do the even downward facing dog. I like to do dolphin. Again, you can look all of this up. I like to, again, put my legs above my head, right, laying on my back. I put my legs behind my head, and I just sit there sometimes for 10 minutes, literally with my legs over my head. I'm laying on my back, I just lift my legs and put it over my head and just kind of sit there. And that just, it's almost like it creates this calmness. It does create a biochemical calm, sort of is restorative, like balance within you, right? And so then when you are presented with high stressors, right, where parents are, their emotions are like whoo woo woo, right, they're getting an offensive, or they're overprotective, they're feeling very insecure, right, and the child, right, they're very anxious, right, that kind of thing. You can kind of be like this steady sort of anchor, right, this grounded force, because I found that when you are grounded as like a teacher in dealing with parents, it does affect them. They can pick up on your biochemical balance, or they can pick up on the steadiness of your presence, and that actually helps them to calm down, right? Because they can pick up on it. They can pick up on your energy, adults and children, right? And I'll do a separate video about the children, and how the children do pick up on your presence as a teacher, right? But the adults especially, like they can pick up on the sort of calmness, the sort of grounded, anchored sort of energy that you have, and it becomes very even healing for them, and helps them to kind of be, more relaxed, and more steady, and receptive, and sort of slow down kind of thing, right? To be more open, right? To be more agile, right? And to discover, right? Because again, in the hormonal, the wanky hips, the hormonal imbalance, the hemispheres of the brain that are wanky, it's like we can become very restless and very anxious, right? So that sort of steadiness can just be very, very sort of grounding for parents, in the way that they can kind of come down, out of that rushing, busy, and start to just really kind of what I've discovered is the presence of someone, who does like various back bends, can actually be very helpful towards their sort of just light loosening up, I like to say, because again, a lot of young mothers and even fathers, you could see like there could be a little tightness, right, to just loosen up, is what I'll say. So yeah, this is kind of my sort of guidance for those of you who are teachers, right, or caretakers, or nannies, or anybody who really works with young children and has to deal with parents, like has to conversate and has to like, talk to the parents, right, that may be a little bit, like, well, what's going on with them, like why are they screaming at me, and then why are they kind of like pushing me away, and then why are they really agitated, and then, right, so yeah. Advice for working with young children, either as a teacher, a caretaker, a nanny, even as a, can I say, instructor, like dance or soccer or basketball, right? Working with young children. So my advice, right? I've worked with young children for a very long time, since I was a child. So I've discovered in my own observation is that children really do pick up on your presence. They're very sensitive, but not in the sensitivity in the way that we as adults, we connect with each other's sensitivity as weakness, right? You're very weak, you're emotional, right? Children, they're very much aware of subtle energy, subtlety, right? Subtlety. And that's what makes them quite intuitive, very intuitive. And they are like sponges. They really do absorb the habits, the behaviors, the sort of way the parents react, and the way the parents interact with their spouse, or the way they relate to themselves, the way they relate to the world. The kids are like binoculars, like, and they just pick it up, and they begin to like mold themselves according to what the parents are basically doing, right? So a lot of times when we look at kids, we're like, oh, the kid's a fool, like what are they doing? They're just misbehaving. A lot of us, as you could say, teachers, we're not blaming the kids. We're like, they're basically, there's something going on in the household, right? And there's something going on with the parents. Either, again, we're, as adults, we get so desensitized to our own like behaviors. We're so unconscious as adults. Like we do these habits, these behaviors, and we've been doing them for like years, and we don't even realize that these habits and behaviors are actually maybe dysfunctional, or maybe they're not as productive, or they are not they don't really mediate anything, right? It's just a lot of conflict, and it's just all unconscious, right? But kids, they respond to that, and they begin to take that on, right? Kids take that on. So, and then they start to basically, all the inner anger, all the emotional pain that a lot of the parents are like bottling up, the kids, they act it out. They're acting out a lot of times what the parents are doing internally, but they're just doing it in a way that's like hiding it away, right? You know what I'm talking about? Like there's this inner anger that some people have as adults, and it's just like, you could tell like they're just kind of suppressing it. But then the kids are definitely, they're acting it out, right? They're definitely acting it out, because the kids don't understand, they don't really know how to suppress. Little kids, they don't know how to suppress. They don't know how to like, when they feel something, they need to express, right? And adults were like, I feel something, I feel something, I feel something. Like we block. We're so good at blocking ourselves as adults, but kids are like, I feel something, I feel something, I feel something, right? And because, and that's what makes kids a lot more creative, and that's what makes kid a lot more fluid and agile, because they're not just feel something, block, feel something, block, right? And that's why a lot of adults are very numb, because they feel something, block it, block it. But kids, they pick up on the anger, right? The frustration of the parents that they're blocking and they're not working through. And the kids, they'll work through it for the parents, even if that means making noises and being loud, or jumping, or trying to get attention, whatever it is. Or basically, a lot of them are doing what the parents are basically they're doing subtly, but not really. It's like unconsciously. A lot of times what parents are doing, like these particular habits and behaviors, right, about the parents, a lot of times the kids are just acting them out, right? They're expressing that, right? Because they don't know how to block, they don't know how to suppress their feelings quite yet, until they get into like high school age, right? They're told to tone it down, don't express yourself, shh, right? Sit in your chair, don't move, right? Kids are seen and not heard, that kind of, stuff that's still going on in today's society. So I've discovered, like, working with kids, right? Working with kids is a different experience, like, than working with like friends or adults, like especially young children. Young children, they really do they're looking for a person that they can really express themselves to, right? And be received, right? And whatever that expression is. But a lot of us as adults are like, shh, like I don't accept that expression, come back with a better expression, right? Kids, they just want to express themselves, right? And when we, as you could say, teachers, just allow that, we'll find that actually these kids will respect us, because all kids really do they just want to be received, and they'll respect us, right? And therefore they'll trust us. So when we say, don't be climbing this, don't be doing this, that kind of thing, they'll trust us, right? Because they know that we care for them. Because children, they know how we care is through the way that we're attentive, the way we listen, the way that they express themselves around us, right? So when you see a kid that's really, really expressing themselves, and again, they may not even know how to articulate, they may just be expressing themselves in a way that just sitting by you or just talking about their shoes, but for a long period of time, right? It's them really opening up. It's them really looking in you and seeing, okay, is this adult going to receive me? Or is this adult going to reject me? And a lot of times when adults reject them, right, or when they see in the adult they see in the adult that they, as the adult, they don't really they don't express themselves. A lot of kids, they don't like adults that don't express themselves, right? They don't really respect adults who don't express themselves, right? So then they're like, I don't really feel like I connect with you as a teacher, so I'm not going to really respect you because you don't express yourself as a teacher. And kids are not half-assed. They're so bold and direct and brazen, and they'll just tell you straight up, right? And they look for that quality in adults, in a teacher. They're looking for a teacher who has that expression that is bold, that is direct, that is clear. It's a clear energy. So, and what I mean clear is that adult is, that the way they express themselves is very noble, right? There's a sense of truthfulness and there's a sense of sort of integrity to one's feelings, because kids are all about, integrity to one's feelings. That's why kids, they can't bottle it up. If they do, they get sick, or they really start to get very depressed as young kids, right? They can't just bottle it up, right? They can get very angry. A lot of kids get very angry and then they lash out because they're just trying to suppress feelings that's very unnatural for them to do. They're trying to be like the adults, but really they're not meant to be like the adults. They're not in that sort of the chronology yet, right? A lot of kids, they want to be received by an adult who actually matches their self-expression. Meaning, self-expression is also, it's about having integrity with your feelings. And we know as adults, we're bottling this, we're hiding from this, we're blocking this, we're not looking at this. We're just as adults, we think that we know it all, but really we have a stick up our ass because we don't have an integrity with our feelings. We don't really express our exuberance, our jazz, we don't really express our desires, our creativity, our spirituality, even our sexuality as adults, right? In a sort of in a character that, right? Self-expression creates a character. So a lot of children, they're looking for a character. They don't care that you're the teacher or whatever, that you have these much degrees. They want to see your character. They want to see the integrity to your own feelings, especially young children, right? Because they want to be received. And not only do they want to be received as a child and know they're not rejected or abandoned or shamed, judged to the point where they have to completely suppress themselves, right, as young children, which is very very painful for young kids to do that, right? Very, very painful. They actually want to, they want to discover, literally when you talk to young kids, again, elementary level, even, preschool, elementary level, even middle school, they really do want to discover. They really do want to discover things about you, about themselves. They really do want to learn, right? But they want to learn how they can be a character that has integrity to their own feelings. They don't want to learn how to bottle up feelings, hide feelings, block feelings, avoid feelings, right? Because that's what their parents are doing. That's what society's doing. And they know that there's a consequence to doing that, which is you don't know how to manage your anger, right? You don't know how to express yourself, right? You don't know how to, you don't learn how to articulate your heart, your feelings, your emotions, right? And you start to lose the sort of creative edge that every child has. Right? We lose our creative spark or creative edge when we do all these things, many things to suppress ourselves, right? Just because we don't want to face the noise or the music of our feelings, right? So when you as an adult, especially when you have this sort of like sense of character and the way you relate to your feelings and your emotions, like kids are like all up on you. They're all up on you. Like, what? There's an adult that actually has a relationship with their feelings and not just like a relationship that is suppressing, blocking, avoiding, escaping. The kids are like, they just like they flock to these type of people, right? And this is things I've seen in my own observation and even in my own personal experience as a young person, looking at who were the teachers that left the most impact. And all the teachers on my list were teachers that I could actually express myself to, and they received me as I was. I didn't have to block, suppress, hide, and they received me. And these particular people, they had a character I admired. They had a character, meaning they weren't just some mediocrity kind of person, right? They had character. They had some sort of integrity with their feelings. Like, I could tell that they were really tapped into their feelings. They had a sense of home, of belonging with their feelings. They listened. They took care of their emotions, right? They had a sense of deep discovery, like a self-discovery. And a lot of kids, that's what they're looking for. They do desire a teacher that not just teaching about, you can say matters of like how to get a job or of how to, fill out a college application or, math or, literature, right? They also do want to have a character development. They are, because they know the character development actually is really the key to them being successful in their self-expression, the way they articulate and the way that they can have a healthy therapeutic relationship with their inner life, right? Their emotions, their feelings, their upsets, their challenges, right? So a lot of times kids, especially young kids, it's like they don't really care about all the credentials and you have the double PhD. They're looking to see your character. They're looking to see what is your integrity with your feelings? How do you relate to yourself? How do you relate to your feelings? Like, are you receptive, available to your own feelings, right? Do you listen to your intuition? Like, do you care for this deeper part of yourself, the emotional side of yourself? They're looking to see like how emotionally stable, not only stable, but how emotionally confident you are, right, as an adult. So for my own personal experiences, like kind of, kind of working with kids, because they are straight up. They don't play no, they straight up look at you and they can see your crap and they know what's going on. Like, even though they don't know how to articulate it, they know, right? So I really just focus on the character, expressing myself in a way that is different from how I express with you guys, right? I don't go as, analytical or deep into like, sort of critical thought or, sort of more advanced articulation. But I do really I come across as I'm expressing myself, right? I have this sense of integrity with my feelings. I do listen to my feelings. I am not oppressing and blocking my feelings, right? And kids, they're like, what? Like, how do you express yourself? Teach me, show me. How do you express yourself? How do you express yourself, right? How do you do it, right? Because they want to know. They want to know how to be artisans. They want to know how to be musicians. They want to know how to discover their emotional balance, and how they want to discover how they can feel at home in their emotions and at home in their body without needing to block or suppress or degrade or judge or shame themselves. And as an adult, when you show them that how to feel emotionally at home and have emotionally belonging in this world that will judge and shame you until you're destroyed, right? They're like, you're the one, you're the teacher I'm going to express all myself to, and you're the character that's going to help me become a character that's a confident human being that is individualized but also confident in my emotions and how I feel and my desires and my pursuit for becoming an adult that actually has something very meaningful, purposeful, and very soulful to convey to the planet. So yes.